yesterday, I think Sean Shapiro was the first one to kind of find it. Not sure what he was doing looking at random NHL rosters in the middle of a Thursday, but noticed that Matt Dumba had been moved to the Pittsburgh Penguins active roster. And then later yesterday, it was announced the Dallas Stars traded Matt Dumba and a 2028 second round pick to the Pittsburgh Penguins for 24-year-old defenseman Vladislav Kolyachonok. This was one we saw coming in some way. We believed that Dumba would be the one they moved on from to get cap compliant. This basically takes his cap all the way off. There's no salary retained here, and Kolyachonok makes the league minimum $775. So I think it puts Dallas in a pretty good spot to have. I don't remember the exact number, 1 point something million above the cap or below the cap, to have a little bit of wiggle room to now bring in a 13th forward and maybe even have a little wiggle room to do something else. So before we get into the kind of the both players, what's your overall take on the trade and how they made this work?
Well, if there was anybody watching our show right now, I got a feeling I'll be saying bing bong quite a bit, because I'm thinking they're going to be kind of happy with the move that happened. It seems the sentiment around Dallas and from the fan standpoint was to move Matt on. And but you know what, I look at it as, it's not a polite way to say it, but I mean, it's just, if you're calling it for what it is, there was an obstacle that had to be moved. And, you know, and again, it's not necessarily that it's about Dumba as the player. It's more about, you know, the salary cap and what they're trying to do. And it would have been nice if they got some kind of a left winger back, but that didn't happen yet. I think this is kind of part of the process, you know, open up and, you know, get your pairs. And from the defenseman standpoint, who's going to look at who's going to play with who, get your numbers to the right numbers. And then I don't know if they're going to be able to do anything before or in the summer. I just think it's going to end up being a trade during the season or something like that they're going to try to find that guy. And I think what that also does is it gives some guys an opportunity to step up in that hole. You know, like you talked about Sam Steele, and maybe he gets that opportunity. Gully said maybe he'll use him there. I'm thinking that if there's one guy that's hoping that hole doesn't get filled, it would be him. You know, and just say, hey, give me the chance. I'll show you what I can do. So.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is it felt like, if you really step back and look at the trade, it felt like Dallas basically had to give that second round pick to Pittsburgh for them to take Matt Dumba. And that doesn't sound nice, but Matt Dumba didn't do himself any favors this season with the beret of injuries, the up and down play, and then obviously being a scratch throughout the entirety of the playoffs. That's not a high value type of target that someone's going to go after and just take on that salary. So Dallas does give up another pick, which I know they don't want to do. They already are very low on picks anyway at the moment. So but they do get back a player, and we'll get into the details of, you know, if he's going to be on this team and all that kind of stuff. But just the player himself, Kolyachonok, I was watching some highlights. He's a good player. I mean, he's been on a bunch of teams. He's played, I think, 74 NHL games. He's got 14 points with Arizona, Utah, and Pittsburgh. Second round pick for the Florida Panthers in 2019. You know, he's got some speed. He can move, and he jumps into the holes and is able to kind of jump into attacks. Has good vision. But the key here, Luds, as we said, is he a realistic roster player, or is he someone that is maybe more suited in the AHL? Because if he is, they're going to have to waive him here before the season. And I think Robert Tiffin wrote about this morning. He's the type of player that you'd be surprised if 31 NHL teams didn't take a chance on a 24-year-old that has proven that he has a little bit of an upside. So what do you kind of see as his future here, or him as a player?
Well, can he switch hands?
I know, right?
You know, I think the situation that the Stars are in, you know, anytime that there's 31 teams that know you're looking to move a certain player, it gets harder to move that player, and they know that you're in a spot. And so they're going to ask for more, which they did. They're going to give you less. You know, they're not giving away, you know, and I think probably Kyle Dubas, the GM now in Pittsburgh, probably thinks, you know, hey, I got a second round pick for him. And who knows, because the team that they have in Pittsburgh right now, it's in a total rebuild there. So whether Dumba can, you know, be a better player there or not, who knows? But I think for Dallas, I don't think it's going to be the answer. But hopefully it's a surprise. It's just now, what do you have? Five lefties, four lefties, five lefties. So you got five left-handed defensemen for sure. You know, and again, I look at that and say, really, you don't, because I think Miro can play the right side. I think Miro's going to play on the right side anyways, and I think he's comfortable there. So we'll see how the pairs shake out. Wouldn't it be something though, like if there was some kind of move for Lyubushkin, and then all of a sudden the 3 defensemen that were brought in a year ago are all trying to get shipped out?
Yeah,
That's
that's
I don't
the
know.
weird part too, right? Like, does this feel like the Dumba move was a rare loss for Jim Nill? I mean, it's hard to look at it and say that it was a good move. It didn't work out, and then it didn't really get them anything in the end. Besides, as we just said, what we're this trade is today. So Jim doesn't miss a whole lot on the guys he signs. People can talk about the suitors and things like that, but those are different stories. This was a who he thought was going to be someone not only to bring more physicality, be able to be established on the right side, maybe play with Miro Heiskanen, but also be able to move the puck. And Jim Nill told me straight up on the phone after these deals right before the season, he said, we think Dumba can refine some of the offense he had, early in his career where he was adding some goals. He didn't have any of that, right? And we know he had injuries, so you can't totally fault him for everything, but he just never really found his footing here.
Yeah, and is that all on Matt Dumba? Did he get an appropriate amount of time on the ice? Did he get the opportunities to play? And again, I guess you could say on the other side of the coin and say, well, the opportunities that he did get, he didn't do what that was expected of him from Pete DeBoer's standpoint or Naz's standpoint, whoever is making that decision back there. So, yeah, the thing is, he's a good skater. He's got a physical edge to him. He doesn't mind doing that. But I don't know if he was just trying to do more than he probably was capable of and trying to get back to that where, he was in double digits the last time as far as goal scoring. So I think that's the guy they were hoping for. But that shoulder injury from that fight that he had a few years ago, it just seems like that has really affected him. But I want to look at it and say, I just don't think he got a fair shot, to be totally honest with you. I think that there was a stretch there where I thought he was better because he was just doing simple things, especially when he was playing with Bishop. They got the puck, they moved it to a forward. He played physical when he did. Yeah, did he get caught out of position a couple times by that? But I thought as his chances and his opportunities came along, as he was trying to, and I'm guessing that was a conversation. Matt, we don't need you to do this. This is what we need you to do. If you're going to be a third pair defenseman, maybe you expected to be in the top 4, but right now you're in that pair. And so what we're looking for a defenseman, the same thing with Bishop, is that move pucks, play physical, move bodies from the front of the net, and just keep it simple, stupid. Kind of one of those kind of scenarios. And I think maybe there were times for him it was hard to reel it in, and he wanted to do a little bit more. And that's what, I said this before, when you're on the bench and you got players that make a mistake, and then they come back to the bench, you put them back out, and they make a mistake again, but they stayed out there an extra 10 seconds trying to make up for that mistake. They just dug the hole a little bit deeper. Where what you have to do as a player is when you go back out there after you've had a couple of boo-boos in a row, your shifts get shorter. And you go out, you just move it, get a hit or get a shot on net, and you change. Then they do that 2-3 times, and then the coach is kind of like, okay, he's got it. He gathered himself back. But sometimes players do it the other way, and now they're doing this kind of thing, and you're thinking, we got to set him down. We got to set him down, let him chill, let him work out. So maybe I just think part of his game probably that wasn't where it was supposed to be, might have been from the shoulders up.
Yeah. Do you think, I'm curious, I just mentioned, Nill telling me and other media during the summer that was something they wanted was a little more of his offense. Is that something that he communicates to someone like Matt Dumba if he comes in? Like, hey, we believe you can score 10, 12 goals again for us and you can be a power play guy. Because remember, he was on the power play a little bit here and there as well with the injuries. So, like, is that communicated to a defenseman when he comes in so they kind of set that expectation?
It should be. I mean, they come in knowing, hey, we want you to add this. We want you to add this.
Right.
Me personally, I looked at all the times in his Minnesota. To me, he was more of a pain in the ass than anything else to the opponent, to the Dallas Stars. And he was a physical guy. I mean, we know about a couple of the hits that he laid on a couple guys. That's what I was expecting out of him, is to be that kind of guy that disrupts a lot of things. And you're kind of, when you're a player like that, you want the other team to know when you're on the ice, because now you got to keep your head up and you got to look for them. So now you're not completely focused on what you're trying to do offensively because you're kind of looking around. And when you have a pair, if you would have had him playing that way along with Bishop, it becomes tough to play against guys like that, as a pair, because that, it's going to be tough to get to the front of the net and they're going to finish me in the corner and they're going to have a stick on puck all the time, just doing all the little things you're supposed to do as defending. And I don't think that's what they got.
Yeah. Elijah, can you throw up the comment from Adam Jennings right here on the right here? I just saw this comment. It was actually something I was going to ask you about. Adam Jennings says, low key, I kind of wanted to see Dumba in the system. Goalie is bringing Glenn Goldson. Vibe I got from Pete is he didn't care much for overall physical game, which is anti-Dumba, but goalie wants to be more physical. So I was just thinking the same question. Obviously, the cap space was the big reason, right? They didn't really have a choice here unless they found a way to move it otherwise. Do you think Dumba could have been a far better player in the system that Dallas is going to play with a little more physicality under Glenn Goldson than he was under Pete?
I think yes. I think he would have been. Sometimes it's just a new voice. You know what I mean? Like he had that one, and it's so hard for me to believe that Pete DeBoer didn't want a physical team. You know, and I go back to that comment that he made halfway through the season where he said we need to be bigger on the walls. That's kind of telling me we need to be bigger, stronger, harder to play against. And it didn't happen, but I just find it hard to believe that's. Again, with Gully being there and the way that we saw that Edmonton play against the Dallas Stars in the playoffs, I think that's what he's going to try to bring out of some of these players here in Dallas.
We all silly like the mayor.